See, I believe in equality, and I believe giving everybody an equal chance to do something just as great as I might be able to make. I know that's an arrogant thing to say because not everything I make is great. But having said that, I'm going to show you one of my vocal chains. I keep getting requests. What is on your vocal chain? What is on your vocal chain? This is what's on my vocal chain. So I usually start my vocal chain with this beautiful thing here. This is a gate, and it's essentially there just to make sure that, nothing errant in the background creeps through. Usually keep it around this setting. Oh, for the purposes of this example, I'm going to be showcasing Maren Morris's vocal from a song she did with Jessie Murph called Texas, one of my favorite songs I've ever produced. I love Jessie Murph. I think she's one of the most amazing artists that's out right now. And this record featured Maren on the record, and I'm going to showcase what chain I used on Maren's vocal. So starting off with this gate at the very beginning of the chain, then a breath control plugin. This is made by Isotope, and it basically eliminates any breaths in the recording, kind of cleans up the recording, especially if somebody's extra breathy. I kind of keep it there as a stopgap measure. You can adjust the target level of the breathiness and how sensitive it is using these sliders. Gives you an opportunity to sort of clean the breaths out without having to manually go in and do it themselves. My approach to it is basically to neutralize it so that everything is equal and then advance it. So this gate is part of the neutralization, making sure that all the background stuff is cut out. And this debreather takes breathiness out of it. You can add as much back in as you need to, but it's good to have it there as a beginning. So my very next thing is a vocal ride. I love this plugin. Here, let's take a look.
You came in like a one-man show.
Best thing about this is that it automatically adjusts the level of what's happening volume-wise in the chain, so that if the singer is singing louder, it automatically cuts it down. If the singer's singing softer, it automatically turns it up. And the reason I do that is I have compressors and stuff later on in the chain, and I want to make sure that the level going into those compressors is as even as it possibly can be. Now, this can work against you if you're trying to have a really super dynamic vocal, like It's Oh So Quiet by Bjork. She's very, very quiet, and then she gets really loud. Like, it'll work against you because everything is going to sound even level. But for most pop songs, you want your vocal to be nice and consistent. This plugin helps you do it. After that, we have a channel EQ. Cutting up to 80. It's good to cut the low ends out. But other than that, maybe a little bit of a bump in the 200 and a little bit of a bump in the high mids. Not really doing a whole lot. This is really more for cutting. Next one is the Pro MB by FabFilter. And this basically gives me an opportunity it's a multipressor essentially. It allows me to compress different sections of the frequency of the vocal so that
you came in like a one-man show.
If there are parts of it that peak,
out of town, had a couple of years on me, knew the shit I didn't know.
It really controls it really well. I mean, without it,
and it felt so
it's hard to hear, but it adds a little bit more woofiness to the vocal.
It felt so me around like a motherfucking rodeo.
Versus this.
Well, you ran me around like a motherfucking rodeo.
Well, cutting out that frequency between 500 and 1K really gives the high end a little bit more space to shine. Then there's my Infinity EQ. I love this plugin because you can put 1,000 different nodes in it if you want to. You can do a whole bunch of different stuff to it. It gives you pretty much every portion of the frequency, and it has just such a really, really amazing versatility. And so a little bit of bump on this one in the 3K range, a little bit of a dip in 244, and the same cut. And the reason that I'm cutting twice, and this might be more superstition than it is technical, but the thing is that I think that certain plugins sort of through harmonic resonance or harmonic distortion will add some of that low end frequency back into the signal after you've cut it. So I find that it's necessary sometimes to cut again to make sure that it's out. After that, yet another EQ. So you can see the thing here. It's like I'm cleaning it up and then I'm EQing it. I haven't compressed yet. So I'm obviously one of those compress after EQ people. This thing's amazing, adds so much sizzle. It's the FGA on the virtual mix rack, and it's based on the API EQ, and it's incredible. I love it so much. pushing 4 dB in the 20 hertz range gives us a lot of pop and sizzle in the vocal. I have one plugin here that I'm not using right now. It's a Pro C compressor, but I have it disabled in the mix. And then I have a de-esser. So this de-esser takes all the brightness that I added to it and sort of tames it a little bit.
It felt so real that I
didn't really have to use it all that much in this particular effort. This plugin is really interesting. Spiff is a plugin that basically, it's made by a company called Oak Sound. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's either Oak or Oak Sound. I like Oak better personally, but Oak Sound. And essentially what it does is it takes all the transients in a signal and it just beefs them up. I find that that's important because transients are really what determine whether or not a person can understand what you're saying. The S's and the T's and the P's in my voice, in my speech, are what allow you to determine the difference between me saying box and pox. Those two words are very similar, except pox is a harder consonant. Box is softer. Spiff takes all the transients in a person's vocal and really beefs it up. So I'm going to show you an example of how that works.
You came in like a one-man show. Out of town, had a couple of years on me.
So you notice when I turn it up, all the k and p and all that starts to push a little bit harder. That's a trick that you can use, especially for singers. And I'm not saying Maren is one of these people because she enunciates beautifully, but that's a trick that you can use to make a singer's enunciation a little bit more clear. Spiff pushed a little bit, gives somebody an ability to be understood. Not that I was worried about that with Maren, but I tend to put that on all my vocals just to make it as clear as it possibly can. Then there's a saturator. I use this one by SSL. I don't push it too hard, just to give it a little bit more grit, tone. Core compressor to end it. It's my favorite compressor right now. I love it. With the exception of the Logic compressor. That actually is my favorite compressor. But for this particular chain, I use the core compressor. It's made by a company called Clevgrand. And it's one of the most easy to use compressors. It visually makes all the sense in the world.
You came in like a one-man show.
Very dynamic.
Out of town, had a couple of years on me.
Allows me to control input, compression, and output right here in this little graphical interface. And I love that. Take a look at it, get a chance. And then last but not least in the entire chain is Soothe. And that's just to clean up any harsh frequencies that are left over. There it is. There's my vocal chain for Maren Morris's voice in the Jessie Murph record, Texas. Take a look at it. Play around with it. If you have any questions, drop a comment. Let me know. If you disagree with my chain, don't say anything because I have a big ego and I don't care. I'm kidding. Enjoy.